Welcome back to another episode of the world famous pod. I'm your host, Mason, and we got a big show today. Big show. It's the pre-national championship show. The Natty, the Bucks are playing the Irish, Ohio State versus Notre Dame. National championship Monday on ESPN at 7:30 Eastern time. So make sure you guys tune in. Make sure you guys are wearing your scarlet and gray. Make sure between now and then you're not wearing green, gold, or navy blue at the same time. So, going to be exciting. Going to be a fun one to watch. Ohio State's coming into this one favored by 8.5 points. I expect a tight game most of the way, but we'll get into that a little bit later or a little bit more on throughout the show. One of my YouTube commenters told me that only boys wear jerseys, so where he comes from, men don't. So with that, I'll be taking this. Just kidding. Fuck that. This is my jersey. I do what I want. Ain't your show. So little preview for the game today. This is only the ninth meeting between Ohio State and Notre Dame in both of these schools' histories. Both are, which is a little surprising given both of the traditions on both sides of this matchup. Both teams are very storied teams. Both teams are college football blue bloods, and only to have 9 meetings is a little bit surprising, or 8 meetings leading up to this game is a little bit surprising. The first 2 meetings, the pre-World War II era of college football, Notre Dame kind of had their way with Ohio State. They won the first 2 meetings, so they went up 2-0 in the overall matchup here. But then after that, the next meeting wasn't until like 96 or 97. And Ohio State just destroyed them. It was like 49-20 or something like that. And excuse me. And since then, it's been all Ohio State. Ohio State went on from that game to win the next 5. So they've won 6 in a row against Notre Dame, trying to make it their 7th, but the stakes on this one couldn't be higher. This one's for all the marbles. This one's for it all. This one's for the national championship. So again, just a little bit of that background there. This is, again, the 3rd meeting in the last 3 years. So most of these matchups have come since the 90s, and half of Ohio State's victories have come on within the last 3 years. The most famous one, obviously, this will be the 3rd one. So last year, instant classic, playing in South Bend. Ohio State needs a last-second drive. We put it on the shoulders of Kyle Honda McCord, gets us downfield, gets us to the 1. Notre Dame only has 10 guys on the field. We hand the ball to Chip Trainum, as my father-in-law so called it, give the ball to the meat, bust through, gets us the final touchdown to score at the end of the game, gives Ohio State the W. I remember watching in my living room where I watch most of my football games because I am a casual fan, and the winters around here kind of suck, even though that was earlier on in the winter. Those details aren't important. Lost my mind. That was the first game my father-in-law ever watched with me, and I don't expect any more in my future. Lost my mind, went crazy, and it was, the rest is history. So with that being said, getting into some stats and some things that we know about Notre Dame ahead of this matchup, and what their strengths are coming into the game against Ohio State. The first one that's been talked about a lot, it's been all over my social media feed, TikTok, soon to be RIP, Instagram Reels, X, formerly known as Twitter, not so much Facebook. So I just named the big 3 I guess the big 4. We'll throw it all out there. It's been all over social media. It's been the talk of most of the podcasts that cover college football and cover Ohio State football, is that Notre Dame's defense is solid, especially with their pass defense. Overall, their defense is number 6 in the country at stopping the ball on 3rd down. They're number 1 in takeaways, number 3 in scoring. With their pass defense, again, touted one of the best man defenses in the country, number 1 in the nation in pass efficiency as well as completion percentage, number 2 in passing yards per attempt, number 3 in TDs, passing touchdowns allowed. They only allowed 9 regular season touchdown passes. And then their anchor, Xavier Watts, their safety, he's basically their version of Caleb Downs. He kind of does it all. He won the Bronco Nagurski Trophy as the nation's top defender last year. So he's looking to make a big impact. This team, they're physical, they're tough, especially with their coverages and their man coverage. So these Ohio State receivers are going to be tested, but I think they have a pretty good opportunity here to make Notre Dame pay. One of the things that is glaring about this Notre Dame defense is that they haven't really been tested much against teams this year. In the games that they were tested, some of the games that are closer to what Ohio State can bring to the table as far as an offensive scheme, teams like Louisville earlier this year went for 264 passing yards and 3 passing TDs. USC, where that was just a slugfest, high-scoring game. USC went for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then even Penn State bullied Notre Dame's defense. They went for 204 on the ground and 3 TDs. So, this defense is good. They're physical, they're tough, but they're not impossible to beat. So, Ohio State is really going to have some opportunities. They're going to have their hands full at times. But I think Ohio State has the upper hand here against what is supposed to be the next strongest defense that they've played, right? We've talked about this time and time again on this podcast. First it was Tennessee with their really strong defense. And then it was Oregon with this is the best defense that they faced. And then it was Texas. No, wait, this is the best defense that they've faced. And finally we're in the national championship. But wait, this time, this is the best defense that they've faced. So, we'll see when the rubber hits the road here, but I have faith in Ohio State and all the weapons that they do have. The other thing that we know about Notre Dame, that they can run the ball really well. They don't really throw the ball too often. Riley Leonard has like over 2,000 and 2,600 passing yards, which isn't bad, but that's definitely not the focal point of this offense. Jeremiah Love, starting running back, over 1,100 yards this year. Riley Leonard, starting quarterback, second leading rusher on the team, over 800 rushing yards this year. And then Jadarian Price, their backup running back, has over 700 yards on the ground as well. So, and they've combined for 40 touchdowns between the 3 of those guys just by running the football. So that's the main focal point of this offense. Offensive line for Notre Dame is going to have to win the line of scrimmage to make this offense go. They average over 210 yards per game. But again, this has the caveat of they haven't really faced anybody quite like Ohio State. The last 2 games that they played, those are probably the closest to the types of defense that Ohio State can play. They had against Georgia, which typically has a very, very good rushing or a very, very good defense in general. Touted, I would say, like the last 5 or 6 years is probably the best defense in the country. When you think of defenses in college football, Georgia is typically one of those names that comes to mind. They only had 154 rushing yards against that Georgia team. They ended up getting the win, I think 23-10 or something like that. They got a turnover, which gave them a short field. I think they had to go 13 yards for a touchdown to end the half. And then later in the third quarter, they returned a punt return for a touchdown to put them up 20. I think it was 20-10 at that time. And then they tacked on an extra field goal. Either way, it put them up into the driver's seat, and they held the reins the rest of the way against that Georgia team. So they couldn't really get the running game going. If it wasn't for a couple big plays by their defense and special teams, that game's a lot closer. Then the next game against Penn State, they pulled it out 27-24. They only had 116 rushing yards against Penn State, and with Abdul Carter there on that defensive line, that guy's going to be a top 5, top 10 draft pick. Ohio State has been playing at that elite level all the way through the playoffs. So they've had either 16 or 18 sacks in 3 games, which is incredible. I think it's 18. So they average about 6 sacks a game, which is absolutely mind-blowing. So this rushing attack that Notre Dame has, They're very good. They're very explosive. They did have that big run, the 93 or 97 yarder against Indiana in the first round of the playoff. They're going to have their hands full with this Ohio State defense and how well they are just getting to the ball, getting in the backfield, and making teams one-dimensional. The third thing that we know about this Penn State, I've kind of talked about it here sporadically as I've talked through some of these other talking points here, is that they're just tough. That's a mentality that we've kind of heard over and over again about this Notre Dame team, is their toughness, and that there's nothing nothing that displays that greater than probably that Penn State game. So watching that game was like watching a heavyweight fight. It was two teams that were just dog shit tired at the end of the game, just throwing haymakers, trying to see who could land one. Notre Dame ended up, with the final knockout. Obviously, that's why they're in the national championship. But this team is tough, and they want to drag you. They want to drag teams like Ohio State, who is typically scores in bunches and scores quickly. They want to slow that team down, get them into a mudslinging fight here, and they want to try to just beat the brakes off you. That's what they're going to try to do with this team. That comes from the top down from Marcus Freeman. He played linebacker at Ohio State under Jim Tressel. He's been a defensive guy, and even I've seen clips of him with the Notre Dame defense. He can't help himself but come over to tackling drills and get in, get guys revved up and get over there and get excited. So he loves defense. He brings that toughness to this team, and that was on display last game against Penn State. And I expected them to try to establish that toughness against Ohio State early on to try to set the tone, trying to take Ohio State out of their game plan. But with that being said, there are some things that Ohio State can do. I think there's a lot more opportunities here for Ohio State. Flips of the coin rather that go Ohio State's way in winning a national championship rather than going Notre Dame's way. Couple things for the offense. Limiting turnovers. Like I said, Notre Dame is number one in the nation in takeaways. So part of that is keeping Will Howard clean, making sure that he's not just staying in the pocket too long as it collapses around him. He's not getting too much pressure. He's able to make the throws that we need to make down the field to get the ball to his playmakers' hands. Within the last three games, Notre Dame, all season long, they've had 38 sacks. But the last three games, they've only had one sack on Drew Aller. They had 4 sacks, which is pretty good production, against a backup quarterback, Gunnar Stockton in Georgia. And then they had 3 sacks in that opening round game against Indiana. So as the games have gotten tougher, production's kind of ticked up and then come down. If Ohio State can have a game like the offensive line of Penn State, Penn State is much more limited on their offense in the scheme of weapons compared to Ohio State. So if they can do what Ohio State or what Penn State did in that game and keeping Drew Aller clean, and Will Howard makes the correct decisions, getting the ball to the guys that are open, given what the defense takes him, this is going to be a no-brainer. I think Ohio State can get out to that fast start. Part of that protection for Will Howard, I give this guy a lot of credit because not a lot of people give the offensive line credit. So Donovan Jackson, guy that slid over, the story. Midseason, slides out over potential All-American guard, slides over to tackle, position he's never played before, and this dude has balled out, especially in the playoffs. In the playoffs against these 3 elite pass rushing teams that we've heard so much about. On his side, he's only allowed 1 hurry in the backfield, no sacks, no tackles for a loss. Dog. Seriously, this dude has been, I know he's on the edge, but this dude has been an absolute anchor for this offensive line. The same can be said for Justin Fry on the other side. Or Josh Fryer on the other side. These guys on the outside have just been smooth and steady, and it's been awesome having them anchor what's been kind of a tumultuous offensive line situation until the playoffs happen. So looking for more play out of them. The rest of the offensive line to do a good job of keeping Will Howard clean. I talked about getting the ball to the playmakers and starting fast. We can't have Ohio State getting baited into this tough guy bullshit football of we're going to establish the run, things that they did against Michigan that ultimately kind of led to their downfall. Do what got you here. Notre Dame has already challenged you a bit by saying that we play man, we're not going to get out of man. Fine, all right. Good luck guarding Jeremiah Smith. Good luck guarding Emeka Egbuka. Good luck guarding G. Scott. Good luck guarding Carnell Tate. Good luck guarding Travion Henderson. Like all at the same time. Okay, you got it. Here's your challenge, and then our boys are going to go out and do their thing. It's funny. I forget who the kid from Notre Dame that said that on TikTok. Jeremiah Smith reposted it. Like that, he's got that dog in him. He wants the ball more than anybody on the field. So that's the other part to this offense is that the Texas did a good job last week of really severely limiting Jeremiah Smith's production. 1 catch for 3 yards. Again, thankfully we have all those other weapons on the other side or outside of him, but that can't happen again. That cannot happen again against in the national championship. Because this team is good. Despite all the hype that I'm giving to Ohio State and all the down talking that I'm kind of putting on Notre Dame, everybody is good when you're in the college football playoff. Anybody can beat anybody, and Notre Dame is, they're going to have a little bit of a tighter rope to walk, but they can definitely beat Ohio State. So you have to get Jeremiah Smith the ball, and I'm pretty sure that once they watched the tape, as soon as that game was over against Texas, it was how do we better game plan so that we can get him the ball? How can we better game plan to make sure that he isn't as limited as he was in this game? And, I think there's some differences between the two defenses. Texas played a lot more zone. They had a lot more where they were bracketing Jeremiah Smith, where he had the safety over the top, and then they had either a corner on him or they had a linebacker taking away the middle. So, there are things that Texas did in that game that you probably won't see Notre Dame do much unless they're just trying to BS us with the talk of going man most of the time. But they do play man more than Texas did. That's 2 different defensive schemes. So we'll kind of see what the defense looks like. But if there's single coverage or anywhere on the field, you can bet that Jeremiah Smith is getting the ball, at least thrown to him. And 9 times out of 10, he's making that catch. So the other guy that's got to get the ball, continue to get the ball, is Travion Henderson. I spoke highly of the 75-yard touchdown reception that he had on that little screen pass to end the first half that stole the momentum back from Texas, and how important that play was in the scheme of the game. He's been doing that all postseason long. He had a breakaway play, a backbreaker against Tennessee. He had a backbreaker against Oregon, and he had the backbreaker against Texas. Expect the home run play out of Travion Henderson to come sooner or later in this game. They just got to keep feeding him the ball, establish the pass downfield, and then get Henderson the ball in space and let that dude work, because he works. Plus, I know they have touchdown Jesus at Notre Dame, but Travion Henderson also has Jesus on his side. I think touchdown Jesus is actually throwing up the H in Ohio, and hopefully that'll be the meme coming out of this game is after the Ohio State victory. So with all that said, hinted at it earlier, Ohio State favored by 8.5. I've taken the under on every single game this postseason. I've been wrong every single time. And I think I had it in my notes here, and I think I'm going to adjust it a little bit. It's still taking the under. Ohio State 27, Notre Dame 20. It's going to be a dogfight for 4 quarters. Ohio State will pull away late, and Notre Dame, there's going to be nothing that they can do about it. So that's what I think is going to happen. Again, things can always bounce the other way. I don't envision that happening with this team. So again, Ohio State 27, Notre Dame 20, picking the under here again. But like I said, I picked the under every time. Ohio State's won every time, but they've gone the over. So do with that information as you will. Notre Dame National Championship, January 20th. It's coming up on Monday night, 7:30 on ESPN. Make sure you don't miss it. As always, go Bucks.